Okay, our first speaker today, as you know, this conference was created as a platform to bring you our new authors. Okay, people that where we just published our new books. Now, some of them are authors that we have, other books by, and some of them are brand new authors to us. This one happens to be a brand new author to us. And so this is a very brand new privilege to me and to us, and I'm very excited. It's been wonderful. I really had a joy when I interviewed him on the radio show, The Metaphysical Hour. And so I'll be really excited to hear what he has to say here tonight. Lee Sumpter is a retired teacher and engineer, and it's always amazing to me where our people come from, their backgrounds. And that's what I find the most interesting is I always want to find their backgrounds because, so many people, they want to look at this metaphysical world, and a lot of times they will say, oh, it's just woo-woo. And they kind of just like, but, and it's like, well, they're just airy-fairy, you know what I'm saying? And, but it's so fun to watch the shift that's happening and how it's plucking people and it's just, and these people, and they're just shifting and where they're coming from, and they're real people. Have you noticed that? They're real people with real backgrounds, and they're engineers and doctors and financial advisors and real people. Normal people. Absolutely. Normal. Oh my gosh, what's that about? You mean this stuff's real? So that's really cool. I love that. It's real down to earth stuff. And then these people can explain to us what's happening. And that's what's so exciting. So that's what I want. Lee's got some really cool things to talk about and the experiences that he's had. And that's what's even more wonderful is when these people start having these woo-woo experiences where they can hear voices and they can see things. And it's like, really? You do that too? Yeah. So here we go. Lee, you ready? You're supposed to come out of this door over here. Anyway, I'd like to, with no further ado, Lee Sumpter. And he wrote the book, We Are the Creators.
I thought I heard my name mentioned. Okay. Good morning. Thank you all for doing all the things you had to do to get over here. I did quite a bit of that myself, and I was very grateful to finally arrive last night. Unfortunately, I still have no idea where I am. I bet some of you are in the same boat. Some of these stories, some of you I've told to you individually, but I now live in Florida, but I've only lived there for about a year. And I came there from far southwest Virginia. It's so far in southwest Virginia that nobody knows where it is or anything about it, but it's cold country, and it's in the mountains. People are quite shocked by just how mountainous and how high the mountains are, how mountainous the region is. But we would have groups that would come in to bring us entertainment, theatrical groups and musical, even orchestras that would come in, and they would bus them in to the nearest motel, and often the nearest motel was still about 30 minutes from where they would be asked to perform up on top of a mountain. And it just occurred to me when I was preparing all these remarks that in the drive from the motel to the school, which had a really whatever you'd say, a really first-class auditorium with all the sound and lights and everything. It was very well done. But in the drive from their motel to the top of the mountain where the school was with the auditorium, they probably didn't even see 50 houses. So I'm sure on their trip that they would wonder, where is the audience going to come from? Where are we going to, where is anybody, because they would do just what I did. They would get on the stage, of course, the performance was often at night, and they would get on stage and the room would be full. And they would come forward and they would say, thank you for coming out to hear us, everything. But we have no idea where we are. We don't know how we got here, and we have no idea where this is, Many of them were from the East Coast, in big cities and things like that. Now, the next thing is that I wanted to say to you that you are a very special, very, very special group of people. You are very special people, because you have made this effort to be here and to hear about these kinds of topics, to think about these kinds of topics, attend workshops, buy books, see videos and the like, so that you can further your interest in this and your ability to work with what kinds of information you can get, and your ability to experience the love from the other side and use that in your life. Now, you are pioneers. Boy, that looks good. Yeah, I sure would. I barely got, you have no idea. Okay, barely got any breakfast done. So anyway, you really are. You're very special. You're very, very special. Not everybody is making this kind of effort. And you are sort of missionaries. And actually, when Julia asked me to do this, and other people asked me to do similar sorts of things, I would say I'm on a mission. And really, I am like one of the other authors that Ozark Mountain has published, Aaron Abramson. I was just going about my business as a teacher, language teacher, foreign languages like English and French and Spanish, And I did do some writing. As an English teacher, I taught writing. I liked to write, but I didn't ever really imagine that I would produce this book. About the time that when I retired, then I started putting together some essays, and I would confess, and as it says in my biography and all, I have really been studying this for a long time, but I didn't really pay that much attention to it, and I didn't really try to put it together. But I wanted to write some essays for my friends who also had retired and who were experiencing prostrate problems, first chakra problems. And I wanted to give them some idea that just because they had retired, that didn't mean that their life was over, that they still had a big job in the world, that they had all kinds of other things that they needed to do. And that I wanted to talk about all of the things that they were doing just to be here. All the things they were doing just to be here. Okay? Creating their world, creating a world, using their spiritual powers to make a life for all of them, all of those around them. I wanted to talk about what I had been learning about what is phenomenological things. People come up and say, "Oh, so you wrote a book, huh?" And I'll say, "Well, yeah, I did. I had a lot of help." And at this point, I will say that I'm very grateful to all of those from the other side, from beyond the veil, that helped me make this book, helped me put this together. We had long, hard discussions about this. Sometimes I flat out refused to say what they wanted me to say. But they finally they'd argue with me, or what they discussed things with me, and finally I would go along with it, and I'd write that. And then they'd give me something else that I refused to say. And so it went. It was a conflict with reality of the spiritual world versus classical education. So anyway, people will say, so what's your book about? And if my wife's standing anywhere around, she says, phenomenology. Yeah, can you imagine? And of course, everybody immediately knew what that was. God, most people can't say phenomenology, So anyway, but in fact, that really was what I was working with. It was how we create our reality, how we create the bubble in which we live, and how we blend our bubbles for our common reality. And I had been really studying this forever. And that's why I was a language teacher, because I studied languages, because languages, the very way languages are structured, express the culture's worldview. It expresses the culture's worldview. And it expresses how that a culture sees its world. And each culture sees its world in a slightly different way. So you have a variety of experiences. And by the variety of experiences, you get a lot of chances to learn things. Okay? The result was that by studying this, by studying how the languages organize reality, cultures, I began to understand how we make our world. Okay? And so that's what I set off to try to describe. It became evident, and this is one of the things that you have to know as to who you are and what you're doing, is that we make matter. We create matter. Nothing else can do that. Nothing else can do that. The sun doesn't create matter. We can create matter. Don't we create our body? Did you not start out as a single cell that divided and divided and divided? Sure you did. Everything in your body you replace, as we know, every 7 years. All the cells, all the bones, the cells in your eyes, in the iris, you replace every day. You create those cells. Where's that coming from? Now, when we were kids, we learned, you got to eat, and you gobble up this food, and your body takes the matter and the energy from the food, and it makes more of you. And when you're a kid, of course, you got to have a lot of you. You got to have a lot of food because you're making you really rapidly. Aren't you? Yeah, you are. They go out and they buy you new shoes, and the next week they don't fit anymore. Okay, so you created who you are, and you create who you are according to a certain pattern. How does your body know how long to make the bones in your arm from your elbow to your wrist? How does your body know how long those bones need to be? Where do you start measuring? Where do you measure from? The end of your elbow? Where do you measure from to get that? How does your body know where your fingers are supposed to end? Okay. Why is that if you're a man, your beard only grows up to here? Stops growing after that. Hey, it's crazy. It just stops growing after that. All right? There's all these kinds of things. We call it DNA, etc. But in fact, it's pretty sophisticated. It's really sophisticated. We do this every day. But like with the kid, if you really do the math, you would find out that the intake of food, when you get as far down the road as I am, you don't eat much food. You get by on very, very little at all. Matter of fact, a big plate of food makes me sick. I'm revolted. It's crazy, I'll tell you. So you go on making a body on just about that much food for a whole day. People in India you know, in South America, it's corn, and they eat a fistful of corn every day. In India, they go about their day in a fistful of rice. For crying out loud. And they do a hard day's work, a lot more than any of us ever know. Oh, really? You know, it's walk, 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 walk everywhere. And yet they get by on just that. So there's something missing between the intake of food and the amount of what we do with energy. That math doesn't work out. So we are making the matter that's in our body, and we know how to do that, and it is extremely sophisticated, and we do this constantly. And then we make, why do we have to stop with our body? Why do we have to stop with our body? So why wouldn't we make the shelves and the walls and the furniture? Okay, now the guy who did this cover on my book has very subtly in the background, he got the whole thing, bang, in one picture. And he's got very subtly the mathematical, well, we call it mathematical, the mathematical, technological background of all of our existence. Because what I've learned, and we're learning this, if you go to conferences like this, the New Age people will talk about how we are moving in the direction of telepathic communication. And you know, I taught these kids, as soon as they woke up in the morning, they were texting their buddies. They were fiercely involved with their friends. Emotionally, they were very closely in contact. I don't know if kids, maybe they have been, but this was something to me that seemed new. And they would text each other. And one of the things in language class would be, you ask all kinds of questions to get people to talk, you know. And one of the questions was, how many times have you texted somebody this morning before you got to school? You know, you had to use the word SMS. They would say, of course, dozens, hundreds, whatever, and of course somebody had to pay for all that, and that caused problems. But I said, I dared to say, because I was about to retire, so I could dare to say a lot of stuff. And I dared to say, why don't you just think about what you're saying to each other, and then when you get together, confirm, ask if that's not what you were thinking, or use your text, you know, your cell phones, or of course cell phones, nonsense, you know, iPhone, iPad, all those things. Use that to confirm what you all said to each other. Now, I can speak to you, your kids, sure, and I can say, why don't you do that? Try that. Test your, what we call ESP, test your telepathy. Okay? Because we are in telepathic communication in the background. We're totally in touch. We all knew we were going to be here today. And I'm grateful to you for being here to hear what I have to say. I'm honored. I'm honored just to be able to be in a room with this many people of like mind. You know? Really? It gives me a boost. Okay, so that's one big thing, is that we actually create matter. Think about it for a while. Think about it, and you'll see that there's just no other conclusion. There's no other conclusion. All right. I could go into the history of this. We grew up in a world where God does it. God makes our body. Well, yes, God is the universe, you know. God runs the universe, if you want. God means many things to many people, but I'll tell you what. There is 2/3 of the population of the world, roughly, rough fraction, probably more like 3/4, has never, ever had the idea of a patriarchal father God. Hinduism, Buddhism, Japanese nature sort of thing, Shintoism, which is very, very old. Okay, so the Japanese version is this modern version, modern manifestation, if you want to call it modern. But anyway, they have an idea of a universe that's God, of a divine power, of a divine spirit, pervasive spirit. God is in everything. Now, you have to watch out in this part of the world because, well, yeah, but not for what I'm going to say. But you have to watch, you have to watch out for what I just said. But you also have to watch out because it's very easy. And I found myself doing this as a child. You would go to God's house to worship. This is a house of God. Okay. Well and good. It's good to have a house of God. It's good to have a place where you can go and feel God and be reminded of God. But please, don't think that God's only in that house. Okay? You take God with you everywhere you are. You're part of it. Aren't you part of it? Sure. You're part of it. You're a miracle. You're a walking miracle. Okay, now, some new stuff. Now, as a teacher of languages, I had to teach a lot of history. Okay, languages are a context. They're in a context. If you talk to somebody, you're always making allusions, things in your culture. Of course, our culture is all media oriented. So we have TV programs and all this kind of thing. And we're always making allusions to these things in our conversation. So languages have a cultural root or a cultural base. And if you're not familiar with the culture, you don't have any idea what anybody's talking about. All right. So anyway, I taught a lot of history so kids would have a sense of what's going on with the language. A lot of history. In the process of teaching this history, it suddenly occurred to me that suddenly we had burst out of thousands of years of doing things, of ways to do things, okay? Now, I do this in different ways. So I'm going to use some math here. I get it I get things fouled up with the math, but just bear with me. One way to start is with 1788. 1788 is the year of the ratification of the Constitution. Now, the purpose of the Constitution was to set up a democratic government among 13 states. Each of those states, it turned out, was also based on democratic form of government, those 13 states. After so many, 100 years, something like that, I don't really know how many exactly, you had 35 more states. All across the country, 35 states that were established with democratic forms of government. Demos, the people. Okay? And of course, then we added 2 more outliers. Now, this has never happened in known history. As far back as we want to go, open your Bible, King Solomon, okay? What we call Old Kingdom Egypt, 4,000, 6,000, however many years ago. Go to the Ramakrishna, 6,000 years. It was always kings, princes, princesses, queens, kings, dictators, tyrants. Always, always. And all of a sudden in 1988, that was 200 years. Okay, a little more than 200 years ago, we broke here on this continent, we broke away from thousands of years of ways of doing things, of governing. Now, I say, this is my perception, my own opinion, there's a great hunger in the world for having somebody else do your thinking for you. There is still yet a great hunger. No, really. People are willing to die to have somebody be their dictator. They just are. Because it's been that way for so many thousands of years. So democracy is hard to live with. Democracy is a shock to the system. But we did it. It's done. Much, despite many efforts to try to push back the other way. Okay, 1800. That's an easy date to remember, 1800. All right, 1803 or thereabouts. No, I'm not. No, I'm out of the U.S. now. I'm back over in England. Thank you, sir. But hey, I am really glad to know I've got somebody backing me up. No, really. Oh, it's a relief. Okay, so anyway, around 1800s, 1803 more or less specifically, in England, they took a steam engine, a locomotive. They took a steam engine they rigged up to drive a piston, and they put it on wooden rails to move stuff around in a factory, in and out of the factory in England, 1803. Okay, now I have to check my notes here. In 1869, which is, how many years is that? 3 minus 63 years, no, 66 years. 66 years. There was a steel rail across the North American continent. 66 years! Steel rails all the way across the continent. You could cross the North American continent in a couple of weeks instead of 3 or 4 months. Now, again, for thousands and thousands and thousands of years, we moved stuff around with muscle. Okay? Either animals or us. That's how stuff got moved around. Muscle. Now, all of a sudden, in 60 years, power is moving stuff across the North American continent. 60 years. Okay, now, about along in the same time period, here's one way I put this. I'm just going to go ahead and throw this out. I like it. It has a nice ring to it. But where I lived in Southwest Virginia, in the middle of nowhere, but now I can see there are lots of middles of nowhere. I found another one. I'm sorry. If you're from here, I apologize. Well, really, But we were kind of proud of being from nowhere over there because we felt like we could just do what we wanted, and we could be who we wanted to be and like that. So, okay. Anyway, near where I lived there was a recreation of a fort. It was a palisade where they used logs down in ditches to each other. And this was out in part of the Cumberland Gap National Park. Now in Cumberland Gap, this particular fort recreated the year 1774. And they totally did recreate it, okay? If you stood inside that fort and did not look at your shoes, you could not tell that that it was not 1774. The smells, the way they had the building, and there were no power lines overhead. It was amazing. I asked questions of the people, the reenactors. I asked questions from 3 books, and I couldn't stump them on anything until I went to something that happened in 1779. I didn't know about that, or something like that. Okay, so it was a great recreation. Now, the National Park Service puts out a brochure. And they say in their brochure, and I don't know if I've actually got that here, that somewhere around 300,000 people, they estimate, went through Cumberland Gap, coming through the Valley of Virginia, going up into the bluegrass region of Kentucky. That was, opened up by Daniel Boone and his associates. Okay, they say about 300,000 people. And that from 1774 to about 1800, I think is the way they describe in the brochure. 1774. People are moving from the East Coast. They said, well, on the East Coast, there was a revolution about to happen. You couldn't trust anybody. Everybody was killing each other. People were fighting over whether they should stay with England or whether they should go with what was apparently a new country forming. And and of course, everybody's fighting everybody. You didn't know who to trust. So people took off and went, they went west for all the different reasons they did. But what's important to me is that 1774 date. Okay, in 1970, where did I put that? I should have it right on my, in 1969. Now, 1974 would be 200 years from 1774. 69 doesn't quite get to 74. It's short by 8 years, I think. 5, thank you. Okay, 5. Anyway, it's short of 200 years. In fact, I wrote that 195 years, so it's short by 5 years. Okay, I can't do that math now, but I did then. All right, not even 200 years. The descendants of those pioneers making their way on foot that was so rugged you couldn't get a wagon through. Okay? It was so rugged you couldn't get a wagon through. All right, the descendants of those pioneers in less than 200 years put a man on the moon. A man on the moon, walking on the moon, making footprints. In less than 200 years. Now, that's you. You are the ones who did that. Ewans. That's what we saw saying with Virginia. Yeah, people like you. Now, you're the ones that went on, you've gone on, but you were there, you saw this. You're part of it. You're part of this culture. In less than 200 years, we went from horse and buggy, we couldn't get a buggy there, but anyway, getting around by muscle power. And if you wrote something, if you wanted to move information, you wrote it down, or you told somebody and they carried it somewhere physically. They carried it somewhere and then gave the paper and ink to somebody, or they memorized what you said, hopefully. That's how you moved information. All right, in less than 200 years, we went from getting around by horses, which is how everything had happened for thousands. 10,000 years? How many thousand years do you want? In less than 200 years. All right, 1844, Telegraph. Okay? So now, back in 1776, when they signed the Declaration of Independence, they signed stuff on various kinds of parchment. It could have been sheepskin. They had different ways of making paper actually out of rags, okay, out of cloth. But anyway, they signed with ink, and people carried it about. And if they wanted to make copies, they could manage to set type, or somebody had to copy it and carry it. In 1844, Samuel F.B. Morse and his associate, whose name I think was Wise, but I may have gotten that wrong. Anyway, he's the one that actually invented the code. Morse did not invent the code, but the name stuck. Anyway, they created a way to move information instantaneously around the world. This originally copper and zinc wires. Not copper, aluminum and zinc. Aluminum and zinc wires, okay? And of course, it goes by the speed of light. 1844. All right. What did I do with that? There it is. 1876. In 1876, you had Bell and his telephone, which actually, there were several people, that had that going. He's the one that finally got it to go. He got the patent office first. But nevertheless, you have now a way to move voice and print. All right. What did I say? Voice and print? No, I'm sorry. Just voice right now with the telephone. So you could transmit words with dots and dashes. Then you could transmit words with voice. Okay, and that was in 1876. Okay, telephone was created. Telephone got more involved. Boy, that's what it says. Telephone, March 10, 1876. Okay. I surprised myself. Okay. 1944. 1944. Meanwhile, no, not yet. You're getting ahead of me. Let me catch up. Okay. In 1844, they dropped the wires. Okay, we're now wireless. Marconi, remember Marconi? You studied Marconi in the elementary school. You did, nobody else does anymore, but you did. Okay, Marconi, wireless, radio. All right, now we're transmitting images, images and voice on a little screen about this big, and television. Okay, we have television. 1944. We're really shrinking this 200-year thing. It's really getting reduced. So we have gone from 1844 to only 100 years later, 1944, and we've gone from transmitting information with beep, 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 like that, to television. Wireless transmission. 100 years. 100 years. Okay. Now, we have also proceeded in all of that thing about the pioneers on foot to the moon. All right, to rockets to the moon. We went through steam engines to internal combustion engine. Okay, we put internal combustion engines powered by hydrocarbons onto airplanes, so we could power the airplanes. Then we went to diesel engines that don't have a spark. Okay, went to turbines, went to jet engines, and then, as a byproduct of trying to kill each other, we went to rocket engines, and then thence on to the moon. And in the process of doing all that, we found a way to generate electricity. In the middle of the 1800s, we were generating electricity with gasoline and hydrocarbons, okay, and water, generating electricity. And by the 1940s, 1950s, we were generating electricity with nuclear power. We've gotten into the very essence of matter. You might give some thought to the idea that changing matter around so we can get electrical power out of it, heat water still, is rather a complex process that releases a tremendous amount of energy. And yet, when you were being born and making yourself, you were dividing cells. When you divided cells, you divided molecules. And you divided molecules, you're dividing atoms. My goodness. You are atomic power stations, aren't you? That's no small thing, okay? It's no small thing. Okay, so that's the historical portion right there that we have to think about. It's very sobering. You think, my goodness, 200 years and less. We've gone from thousands of years of way of doing things to just pop. Now, all of a sudden, we're very advanced. And we're nowhere near as advanced as we will be as we're headed toward. Okay, now, see, Julia I stood there. She spoke for about 20 minutes. I tested these seats before we got started here. They're about 40-minute seats. They are. Okay, we have a conference like this in Johnson City, to which I attended, and I would be, if somebody went on and on, I would be crippled. I could not get out. Neither could I get out of the seat, but if I managed to get, with somebody's help, I couldn't get around the building anymore. So I'm trying to avoid that. Anyway, here we go. Now, I'm going to talk about near-death experiences. Now, this is a new thing that we hear about a lot. When I started writing this book that I know of, there were about 2 sites on the internet about near-death experiences. There were not really that many books written. There were a few. Now there are a lot of books written, and there are thousands of narratives on different sites on the internet, thousands. People report these things, and they get recorded, and there are lots of books. But nobody really understands. They just don't get it. They don't get it. They're materialists. Okay? They're materials. What you see is what you get, and that's all there is. All right. In this little book, this tiny little book, with the help from the other side, I do an analysis of near-death experience. Okay, so here we go. Somebody gets something bad happens to them, and their body doesn't work anymore, and medically they're flatlined. There's no response from their brain. There's no brain waves. The heart doesn't beat. Apparently there's no blood circulation. I'm not a doctor and all that, so I don't really know, but their just body doesn't work. They're dead. Okay, there they are. They're dead. Now, while all this is going on, the soul is very busy. The soul often reports, I watched the doctors thrash around trying to get me back to life, doing the electrical shocks or, trying injections of this and injections of that. They were trying to save me. I watched them do that. My wife had the experience of watching a hospital staff open drawers trying to find the antidote to that iodine dye that they put in you when they do an x-ray, to have things show up. She had a really serious kidney illness, and she died. And she went up and was, looking down on the table where her body was, and the various technicians in the room, the nurses were there. What drawer? No, try that. What drawer? Hurry up, we don't have much time. She watched all that. Okay, fortunately they brought her back, for which I'm very grateful. Okay, so the soul's very busy. The soul watches what's going on. The soul watches. Sometimes the soul actually hears. The soul goes on and encounters friends and relatives in heaven, even pets. Just like people say who die and then, communicate back by, say, automatic writing or through a medium. But 10 minutes? Really? Okay, thank you. That's nice to know. Okay? The soul does all of these things. Okay? Now, when the soul reanimates the soul through the body begins to report what all the soul did. Now, see, I said the soul watches. The medical staff try to bring the person back to life. The soul has eyes to see. The soul hears. The soul hears conversations with heavenly spiritual beings who counsel the soul on what's going on and what they need to do. Does the soul have ears to hear? Does the soul have a rational brain so it can reason out what's going on? The soul remembers all of this. So when the body is reanimated and the life goes on, the soul can describe what happened in quite detail. So the soul has senses, eyes to see, ears to hear, even olfactory. I smelled beautiful fragrances. I heard music. Maybe there was a sense of touch. There's a description of it being cool. Sometimes, cool air. So the soul has all these senses. It turns out that the senses that we have in our body that do these things are analogies for what senses the soul has, powers the soul has. The soul has powers way beyond that. But it's powers that the soul has. Okay? So we are the physical manifestation, of an entity of which we don't know enough, that has all of these abilities that we associate with our body. Somebody needs to stand up and ask, well, what do we need with eyes if the soul has eyes? Now, when I was teaching, sometime I tried to sign a kid to stand up and ask that question. You know, it's craziness. Okay. Yeah. Well, he's busy. Okay. So anyway, what do we need with eyes, ears, touch, taste? This is how we check on how we're doing. When we're creating our world, like right here, we wouldn't want to create this to be like, you know, the way my wife keeps the house at 68 degrees. You know, so I'd have to run and get a jacket. We don't want to do that. So we create the atmosphere as something that's we like. And our senses say, okay, I like this. Okay? Or if, for instance, I made this shirt really way too red, or maybe it was just really shiny red, just obnoxious, okay, then I have to say, well, you need to tone that down. So our senses keep up with what we are creating and try to make it be what should be within the time and culture of where we are at the time. And we do all of this collectively. Okay, so now there's a guy named Dr. Newton in California that has 2 books about hypnotic regression. Okay, now Dolores Cannon is a pioneer of hypnotic regression. Absolutely. You should get her book called 5 Lives. She describes how she started out with that. Great book, one of her first books, but she went 10 or I don't know how many years, 10, 15 years before she got it published, maybe 20. Okay, 5 Lives, Dolores Cannon. All right, so I'm losing it, so those 5 minutes, I am. So anyway, with hypnotic regression, the soul is remembering past lives. It's remembering past lives, okay? All right, anyway, that wasn't what I was gonna talk about. I was doing something about hypnotic regression. Anyway, that will come back. You don't recall what it was I was.
Well, we are psychic. Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
5 lives remembered.
Well, yeah, I was talking about 5 lives remembered, but,
Oh, yeah, Newton. And you have 30 minutes.
oh, Dr. Newton. Okay, yes. And one of his patients that he had hypnotized reported that you do not use all of your soul to be here. Your soul, somewhere around, they use percentages, some 1/3 or maybe more, stays in the heavenly realm and goes about its heavenly realm business. Okay? Your body, the body you create, could not sustain the power of the soul, the whole thing. It's more powerful than the sun. Whew. Wow, got a lot of crazy stuff here today. Okay, folks, I don't know how many minutes I have left, but here you go. Somebody came in. Thank you, dear. I bet you he did give me that many, but I appreciate that you did. Somebody's from California, 2 guys from California. I've already put one of them to sleep. Hey, look, it's a skill. All right, listen, I'm going to tell you, I would start my class, and as soon as the sound of my voice would cause 5 people to have bladder problems. Honestly, I got to go to the bathroom. It works on my wife, too. It's unbelievable. Maybe I could sell it. Maybe doctors could use it. Just record it, and people are having bladder problems. They could pee, All right. This isn't so funny. For the last 3 or 4 or 5 years here, it started, I think I put it at 2012. I've had visions of water rising up in Puget Sound and flowing through Seattle over 2 stories deep. Okay? The first time I had that vision, it made me ill. I couldn't deal with it. I didn't really know it was Seattle, all right? All I did was see water coming up over a seawall, over a road, through a city, carrying cars with it. I was very high in the vision. I just rejected it. I don't want to know this. You can't put this on me. I know I've done everything else for you, but I'm not doing this. Okay. Several months later, I was shown this again, much closer. And this time I could hear the water rushing through, the metal banging around. Okay, I could feel the energy of the flood. You know, if you stand on a bridge when a river's flooding, you can feel the energy coming down this river. I could feel that energy. All right, so then I started reporting it. I reported it to an earthquake website in California. It goes up and down the coast. It's called Earth of Boppin. All right, they have a number of categories, but they keep track of this stuff. All right, now the second time I had the vision, some more information came. There would be 3 earthquakes, not 2. And of course, they did describe to me that it was Seattle, Vancouver, Tacoma, Portland, the whole Northwest. I'm sorry. I knew when I started to do this that there would be people here. You would hate me if I came up here, though. And no, if I gave this talk and something happened and I did not tell you, and I knew, that won't work. Okay. Now, 3 earthquakes, magnitude 10 or so. 2 smaller ones. Okay? Lots of volcanic activity. The Olympia Peninsula becomes an island. Flooding way inland. Now, there are a number of articles published saying exactly this thing that are scientifically based. They went out and dug around and sounded and studied Japanese tsunami history, etc. It's been on CBS, it's been on CNN. Mine is simply a spiritual source. This will go on for something like 60 days or so. It'll be quiet, and then the volcanism will just go and go. The waves will go across to the east through Yellowstone and south down the California coast. For 2 years, the California coast is going to be subject to change, considerable change. Not as extreme. I was just recently told, not as extreme as the Gordon Michael Scallion maps. Not as extreme. However, I talked about near-death experiences. Many reports of near-death experiences have described being up above the North American continent and looking down and seeing it as divided by a Mississippi River that is miles and miles wide. Miles and miles. Many of them. I have an article I wrote for a magazine in Atlanta, Oracle 2020, and it's called Prophets of the Great Divide. And I cited back then, 5 different sources for this prediction. Modern, current. Okay, this occurrence, this event in the Northwest will eventually bring that about. It's not going to be global warming and flooding. It's going to be a cracking up of the North American plate, tilting. Okay, so there were going to be 3 topics, and the third one was a surprise. I got 3 topics and a 4th one that's a surprise. That's the surprise, and I'm passing it on. I carry this. I have seen it. I'm not the only one that has seen it. I have a cousin that is extremely psychic. Who lives in Kentucky. And she's seen the gas in the earth. You all publish James, James, the archaeologist, geologist, Churchward's grandson's book. Okay, James Churchward was very much a pioneer in different versions of how coal is made and how the mountains are made. He blamed it all on gas pockets that are in the earth. Well, that gas is active. Right now in Washington, they don't know what it is, but they hear a whistling in the rocks. I know what it is. It's gas moving. Big pockets of gas. Okay, I'm sorry to leave you with this note. Oh, it's in 6 months. The window of opportunity is the 10th month, October, and the old Roman 10th month, December. Middle of October, middle of December, when it starts. This year, 6 months. Okay, I'm sorry. I mean, I live with this. I'm almost crushed. And now I've put it on you. But now we know we can do stuff, or not. Okay? I mean, you know when St. Helens went, there was that guy Nixon, and he refused to go. And I'm sure he didn't feel a thing. No. You know, neither did his dog. So anyway, this is a choice that we can make. We can make choices. But I'm sorry, you know, guys, the local rescue people, they were on CBS and CNN. There will be no escape. They say that everything west of Route 5 will be toast. That's their, I'm quoting. That's their words. We figure everything west of Route 5 will be toast. It's a north, it's a Interstate 5. North and south highway, up and down the whole coast. Up through California, Oregon, and Seattle. Yeah, well, no, it's in from there. That's Route 1, I think, in California. Yeah, this is Interstate 5. They said it'll be toast. There just won't really be, and they said it'll be uninhabitable. There's no water, no sewer, no electricity, no power. The dams on the Columbia will mostly not survive. You know, and now, this is the geologists, of course, and they say, we don't know when. But recently, the California geologists have said, you know what's going to happen, folks, is these faults are going to get together. It's got to be. Sooner or later, they're going to get together. Well, I can tell you in the next 2 years, they will. And there'll be extensive damage in San Francisco, among others. It's going to go down from north to south, and it will start in the northwest. All right, what we can look for, if there's anything to what I'm saying, is in July, August, etc., the animals will flee to the west in droves. Herds. Did I say west? For 2 weeks I've been saying, don't say west, Lee, say east. But they're going to be getting out of there and going east, okay? So there'll be... Yes, but that turned out to be, who knows? They said, no, they weren't running away, they're running in. That was last year, I think, year before. But now we will see automobile and elk and automobile and deer and who knows what else. But there will be herds getting out of there because their senses will be saying, we don't want to be here. This is not the place to be. And if we don't see that in the fall, late fall, then maybe this is all just balderdash, you know. But, you know, they keep bringing this to me, and I've learned to respect what I've been brought. You know, I mean, they've shown me over and over, and they told me I'd be doing this. What am I going to do? You know. All right, thank you. It's been great to be here to talk to you. It really has. And I'm sorry that I closed with that, but I made a resolution about it. I made a resolution to even write about it. You know, you just have to decide. Now, I was told the other day, I was told a week ago, many know these things, but they've chosen not to speak. So, you know, and I'm getting into her time, so I got to go.